We begin with a home movie showing the violence Palestinians endure even today. The Israeli Defense Forces interrupt a Palestinian family enjoying friends in their garden. Other than running inside, these people have no viable recourse when attacks such as this occur, and this is one of many.
The prophet Isaiah was very concerned about what was happening in his own day. And he said, the way of peace they do not know. There is no justice in their paths. So he connected peace with justice. And that is very important. That's exactly what we at Sabeel connect. When we talk about peace, we are talking about justice.
And justice is part of Christianity, part of Judaism, part of Islam. And we really, as humans, we have to work hard to get justice.
Sabeel is a Palestinian Christian organization started in Jerusalem by a group of Palestinian Christians, mainly lay people, very strong women leadership at Sabeel. And we started to make the gospel relevant to Palestinian Christians. We are also working with Christian-Muslim relations in Jerusalem and in other parts of the country. And we also work on justice and peace.
I think people who are for justice and human rights and peace are on the same side. Naeem and I aren't in any way on opposite sides. The ones that are on the other side from me are the ones that are encouraging conflict and domination and occupation and militarism.
I think the battle is really here. Yes, the Palestinians can develop a strategy that needs to be done, and I totally agree with Jeff that there have been some serious failings in that regard. I think there are other strategies like nonviolent resistance that need to be considered, if not adopted. But the battle's really here because there's a power dynamic going on, and the only way to actually balance out that imbalance of power between a very strong Israel and a very weak Palestinian Authority is to have pressure from the outside on Israel. It's not going to happen through negotiations. Now, that might come as a surprise coming from someone like myself who's an advisor, or used to be an advisor to the negotiations team. But it's precisely because I was an advisor that I realized that negotiations between a weak party and a strong party cannot yield any sort of fair result. And I think we saw that over 10 years of negotiations after Oslo.
The Israeli occupation must come to an end. When I talk about the occupation, I am talking about these areas: Gaza, the West Bank, East Jerusalem. A Palestinian state must be established. And the Palestinian state must be viable, sovereign, and independent, not under the domination of Israel. And Israel must recognize the territorial integrity of the Palestinian state. The Palestinians and the Arab states must recognize and accept the state of Israel. So recognition and acceptance of the state of Israel is essential for peace. The government of Israel must admit the injustice it has inflicted on the Palestinians and accept its responsibility in making amends.
Israel right now is in control of the Gazan aquifer, the only source of water for Gazans. When the settlers were living in Gaza, the 7,000 settlers compared to 1.3 million Palestinians were using about 3/4 of the water from the Gazan aquifer, which means a huge tragedy for the Gazans. There's discussion about selling water to the Gaza, about 3 shekels a bottle of water. And I tell you, $2, an average person in Gaza living under $2 a day will not afford water.
You know, as a result of the creation of the State of Israel, 750,000 Palestinians were driven out of their homes. Some fled. None of us was able to go back home. My family was driven out by force at gunpoint. I was a boy at the time, and I remember that if we do not leave our homes and get out of our town, that they will kill us. And what happened to me happened to 750,000 Palestinians. In order to prevent the Palestinian refugees from returning to their homes, they bulldozed over 500 destroyed villages throughout the area that became Israel. So today, the 750,000 Palestinian refugees are over 4 million. So the fifth point, we have to address the Palestinian refugee issue justly. I want, on one hand, to be sensitive to Israeli needs, but I want also a just solution to the Palestinian refugees.
The world thinks that Israel's biggest enemy is terror, when in fact it is a demographic war that Israel is fighting, and continues to create new measures on the ground in order to contain the Palestinians from growing to larger numbers that they can no longer handle.
According to international law, all the settlements built by Israel on occupied Palestinian land are illegal. Sabeel suggests that instead of dismantling the settlements, they must become an integral part of the Palestinian state, and they would form the new towns for the returning Palestinian refugees. But also we say that if Jewish settlers want to live in Palestine on those settlements, the Palestinians should welcome them. But the settlers would have to become Palestinian citizens. So by doing so, we are redeeming the settlements. So the sixth point is we must address the settlement issue, and we cannot accept the settlements to stay where they are or to become part of Israel.
There was one part of the Zionist ideology that I never ever accepted, that I never understood, and that I think has ruined everything. And that's the idea of exclusivity.
There is no way around this. No Palestinian, Muslim or Christian, would accept to see Jerusalem under the exclusive sovereignty of Israel. Religiously, my friends, the city is equally holy to the three religions, and politically it can be shared capital for both the Palestinian as well as the Israeli state. If this does not happen, the conflict would only be postponed, but never solved.
Physically, psychologically, and socioeconomically, and demographically, Jerusalem has been divided and subjugated beyond its 1967 occupation. Settlements are expanding in and around Jerusalem. There are about 10 settlements in Jerusalem, about also 7,000 settlers. The apartheid wall has successfully separated the city from its West Bank hinterland, and some of its own communities are no longer contiguous. And I even heard in July that Palestinian Jerusalemites will be issued permits now to be able to access the West Bank or Ramallah. The eastern part of Jerusalem is strangled and crumbling, denied any semblance of equality in the simplest way, such as municipal services. Meanwhile, unemployment and poverty is rising, along with taxation, leaving more and more people completely dependent on social security from Israel. And I'm a live example of those who cannot find jobs in Jerusalem. And I can't obviously find jobs in the West Bank or the future mini-state because I can't access that.
Beginning of the Second Intifada, I read in the news that a woman had to give birth at a checkpoint. I was absolutely shattered and deeply ashamed to hear that things like this have to happen under my name. To fight anti-Semitism means to accept universally valid moral values. And one of these obligations is to speak out, not to remain silent when we detect injustice in our surroundings. In the face of injustice and oppression, a moral person must not close its eyes and keep silent. And since I live 20 minutes from the place where daily and hourly human rights violations are committed, I must not remain silent. I found a couple of women, and we were very few, and we founded a group which is called Mahsom Watch, which is a connection between Hebrew and English name. Mahsom means checkpoint. It's a checkpoint watch women. Today we are 500 women all over Israel and the West Bank, and we monitor 25 checkpoints twice daily, every day in the week.
Sabeel today is promoting the whole issue of confederation, and we believe that this is possible. We need Israel. Israel can help us. Our country has been devastated by the occupation. And so we're working for two states, but linked together in a dynamic, creative relationship so that we can become interdependent on each other. This, we believe, is essential to the future of peace in our area.
And that leads me to the rebirth of the prophetic and truth-telling Jews of Conscience 2000 to the present. Solidarity with the Palestinian people as a solidarity with Jewish history, recognizing the implications of Israeli power, control from Tel Aviv to the Jordan River, which is what it is. Jerusalem as the broken middle of Israel-Palestine, where two broken peoples could meet and begin again. And revolutionary forgiveness. That is a forgiveness that is based in justice, where the assault of one against the other is then taken into a new place when justice is the path, and where an injury against one ultimately becomes an injury against the other.
We must build a culture of peace. We must implement an educational program for peace in Israel and in Palestine. We need to invent a culture of peace and nonviolence. It must be active for the sake of all of our children who have been brought up on violence.
The concept and the interest in nonviolence have been tremendous in the Palestinians, with the Palestinians. Many, many times you don't see it, you don't hear about it, because none is killed in the actions of the Palestinians. And it's our hope that every village in Palestine can be trained in nonviolence. It's a request coming from them. And the second request, we hope strongly that that request also would come from refugee camp.
My final point for the Sabeel of peace: we must build democracy in our area. We must have a society where religion is separated from the state. One of the greatest threats back home is coming from the extremists, religious extremists of both sides. We have Palestinian extremists and Israel has Israeli extremists. Israel today brags of its democracy, but its full democratic benefits are largely limited to its Jewish citizens. In Israel today, there are about 1.3 million Palestinians who are Israeli citizens, and they are discriminated against because they are not Jewish. I am one of those because I hold an Israeli citizenship. And many people inside Israel today are working against discrimination of Arab Palestinian Israelis, so that we will have full democracy in Israel itself for all of its citizens. But the same needs to apply to the Palestinian. We still don't have a state, but we are working, and I hope it will happen, that the Palestinian state will have to be democratic for all of its citizens, not only for Muslims, but also for Christians. We must work to build a society that respects religion and religious freedom, but consigns it to the private sector. We must work hard to create respect, understanding, and acceptance among the people of different religious backgrounds. The beauty of both Palestinian and Israeli societies is its multicultural, multi-religious, and multi-ethnic backgrounds. We must keep the mosaic. We must keep the mosaic. We must work for a non-racial and non-sexist society. I believe these 10 points that I have outlined for you make up the Sabeel of peace. I commend it to you. I ask you, my friends, to pray for us. I ask you to join us so that we can achieve the Sabeel of peace. Remember that you are truly a child of God when you are active in peacemaking.
To be Jewish and to have suffered is not only to protect Jews against suffering and violence, yes, but to protect everyone against it, including when Jews are doing it. You see, we just haven't woken up, that is, the Constantinian Jewish establishment, to the fact that when we get power, we do just about everything that has been done to us. Progressive Jews have basically, over the last 20 years, been against any question of political action or economic action vis-a-vis Israel. The Quakers have made a lifetime of bringing these Jews around. But they have actually held back the discussion by setting parameters of debate, which means that Palestinians cannot have their own voice. Divestment, US aid to Israel, military support for Israel, etc., are concrete ways of addressing Israeli power. Now, but too late, or very late, Christian denominations are coming out one by one for aspects of divestment. They're being hit by Constantinian Judaism. And what do those Christians do? They're very nervous. Christians don't know how to stand up to Jews when Jews are wrong. But Jews have no problem standing up to Christians when we think Christians are wrong. What is it about Christians? What is it about Christianity? Well, part of it's the history. Part of it is your history. Yeah, it's a big part of it. But you are not a friend of the Jewish people if you go running to the call from Jewish power. And you make Jews of conscience life much more difficult. You want to be in solidarity with the Jewish people? I'm all for it. Be in solidarity with Jews of conscience in America and in Israel. You are not a friend of the Jewish people if you are a friend of Constantinian Judaism.
The peace can only be established on the basis of fairness and justice. And on that score, we are entitled for the right to self-determination and establishing an independent state and the rights of the refugees as stipulated in UN resolutions. 5 years have passed. Still, we are very far from these objectives. And Israel has been violating the peace process, the terms of reference, the ground rules of the peace process, by continuing to seize territory and establish settlements, establish physical facts on the ground, to face the world with fait accompli. That is the cause of our frustration. torchbearers is a symbol, and for us certainly is to see that real peace is established, a peace that caters to our right as well as to the right of the other side. It is an established fact that Palestinians can and are willing to coexist with Israelis. There is no difficulty about coexistence. The only difficulty is the failure to reach a just settlement. Lack of a just settlement of the political issue will remain a formidable obstacle.